we know for a fact that they cannot change the dimension of the frustration of the people in Iran who now want regime change. Why? Because their economy is in the tank and the quality of life that they have is in the tank as well. And they know full well that this regime does not have the capability to recover their society economically. The likelihood is we will use military action here. I think that is the preferred option, and I think that is likely the path we'll be on after these negotiations do not achieve their objectives.
Should the U.S. negotiate with Iran or strike Iran? Check out this great clip over here with General Jack Keane talking about this subject. We'll watch it together and then we'll talk about it. But first, hit that subscribe button over there in the corner. We'd love to stay in touch. Check this out.
President Trump remaining optimistic on talks with Iran, but still considering sending a second aircraft carrier to strike Iran if negotiations fail. Netanyahu is expected to push for Tehran to stop its uranium enrichment program, scale back ballistic missile development, and cut ties with terrorist proxies across the Middle East. Joining me now is Fox News senior strategic analyst and chairman of the Institute for the Study of War, General Jack Keane. General, good morning to you. Thanks so much for being here. It doesn't seem like a stretch to just have a commitment not to support terrorist proxies across the Middle East. Your reaction to this?
Yeah, well, certainly the meeting between these two leaders is certainly, it's quite amazing. President Trump's been in power for 13 months, and this is his 7th meeting with Prime Minister Netanyahu. You got to look at what he is. He's really a wartime commander, and President Trump certainly is full throttle in support of this wartime commander because obviously they're our closest ally in the Middle East. And he is fighting Iran and its proxies, trying to literally destroy the state of Israel. This is what this has been about. And it's remarkable in a sense because it reminds me of Roosevelt and Churchill, when Churchill was dealing with the Nazis and we hadn't been in the war yet, and Roosevelt was supporting him and talking to him on a regular basis, not just providing physical and material support, but obviously also moral support and intellectual support to the endeavor that they're doing. So the two of them seem to be married at the hip here, and I think it's absolutely the right approach. Coming into this, I think where we are is certainly President Trump is holding to the pattern that he's had in the past. Before he uses military force, he tries to establish a relationship and get a diplomatic solution. He has tried that before with Iran. Before the Midnight Hammer attack on their nuclear facilities, and he certainly tried it with the Maduro regime. And this is where we are. And I think Prime Minister Netanyahu coming in certainly has some concerns about what the end state of negotiations would be. You mentioned the 3 major ingredients to them, Maria: nuclear, ballistic missiles, and no support for proxies. Those are likely the objectives. Iran is unlikely to agree to all of that, maybe just some of it, to stall. And why do I say stall? Because that's one of their tactics. They want to put off a military operation. Also, if they could get some kind of a deal, the second objective the Iranians have is to get sanction relief. We know for a fact that they cannot change the dimension of the frustration of the people in Iran who now want regime change. Why? Because their economy is in the tank and the quality of life that they have is in the tank as well. And they know full well that this regime does not have the capability to recover their society economically. And that being the case, they want sanction relief so they can get the revenues to do just that. That is their objective here. I think the likelihood is we will use military action here. I think that is the preferred option, and I think that is likely the path we'll be on after these negotiations do not achieve their objectives.
Wow, though that's quite significant. So Iran was in a weakened spot the last time we spoke in terms of the impact of the U.S. and Israeli strike on their infrastructure. And yet they come out swinging, continuing to come up with hostilities against the United States. How do you read the Iranians right now?
Yeah, well, what the Iranians have, their priority after the 12-day June war, certainly that nuclear program was, in a sense, dismembered and mostly destroyed. They want to recover that, but they haven't taken significant action to do that. Where they put all their effort into, Maria, was their ballistic missile program. The Israelis took down about 50% of it, of the missiles and storage capability and scores of launchers, but they worked earnestly to recover it. And they have recovered not all of it, but they have recovered much of it. And that is the Israelis' concern. They believe that the near-term threat to them is not a nuclear program, long-term threat for sure. Near-term threat is the ballistic missiles. They also have thousands of drones. Unlikely they would shoot them at Israel because it takes 6 to 8 hours to get there. They would use those against our bases in the region or maybe some of the allies in the region, to include short-range rockets. So Iran does have a retaliation capability, but that is why the buildup has taken place, Maria, in the region, as you identified, and even the potential of bringing more in, is to make certain that that retaliation capability that they have in terms of a military strike is destroyed comprehensively very early in any operation that the Israelis and the United States combined would likely conduct against them.
There are some moments in history when nations have to decide whether they're serious about their values or merely sentimental about them. General Jack Keane has said that he doesn't believe negotiations with Iran are going to succeed. He says that military strikes may ultimately be necessary. And that's not the language of a warmonger, that's the language of someone who has studied power and patterns and precedent. So let's speak plainly. The Iranian regime has been under sanctions for decades. It has negotiated before under multiple U.S. administrations, yet throughout these negotiations, it's continued enriching uranium far beyond civilian levels. The International Atomic Energy Agency, the IAEA, has repeatedly reported restricted access to inspection sites. And at the same time, Iran funds and arms proxy militias across the Middle East, Hezbollah in Lebanon, Hamas in Gaza, Shiite militias in Iraq, the Houthis in Yemen. These aren't rumors, these are documented policies with documented consequences. A nuclear-armed Iran would not simply change the balance of power, it would ignite a regional arms race. Saudi Arabia has already signaled that it would pursue nuclear capability if Iran crossed that threshold. Israel lives under daily threat from Iran's proxies. American troops in the region are routinely targeted by Iranian-backed groups. History teaches us something uncomfortable but clear. Regimes that openly declare death to America and death to Israel should be taken at their word. That's not about pride, it's about prevention. Diplomacy is sacred, but diplomacy without consequence becomes theater. Negotiations only work when they're backed by credible strength. The failure to confront aggression early oftentimes leads to a far greater war later. We learned this in the 20th century at enormous cost. America's interest is not endless war, it's stability, it's deterrence, it's protecting allies, it's safeguarding global energy routes, it's preventing nuclear proliferation. Force, if used, must be precise, must be measured, and must be reluctant. But sometimes the moral use of strength prevents catastrophic weakness. Peace is not achieved by wishing evil away. Peace is secured when good people are strong enough to defend it. And here's the deeper truth. Strength exercised for the sake of life is not aggression, it's responsibility. The world does not need America to be reckless. It needs America to be resolute. Because when free nations stand firm, tyrannies retreat. And sometimes the most compassionate act in history is the courage to say enough. If you like this content overall, that subscribe button over there in the corner. We'd love to stay in touch. Take care.